Do you want to learn the tricks that top leaders use to get the most out of themselves and their teams? Well, Naftali Hoff is here to help. Lead to succeed. Picks the brains of top leaders to learn about their challenges, insights, and best practices. Here's Naftali.
Hello, Lead to Succeed Nation. It's Naftali Hoff, and welcome to Lead to Succeed, episode 83. This episode is sponsored by the Impactful Business Leadership Mastermind. The Mastermind brings together hungry entrepreneurs and business owners who want to scale their business, get their toughest problems solved, learn best practices, and build their networks. Learn more at impactfulcoaching.com/BLM. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Hillel Fuld. Hillel, named Israel's top marketer, is a tech journalist, startup marketer, and technology expert. Hillel works with technology companies and accompanies them from idea to revenue. He also works with leading tech brands as an influencer, including Google, Oracle, Huawei, and many more. Hillel was recently named the 7th most influential tech blogger on the internet and is among the top 100 most influential social media personalities across the globe. Hillel speaks publicly on various topics, including marketing, entrepreneurship, Israeli tech, and his personal story and business philosophy. Hillel, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you. And I got to say, your check is in the mail because of that nice intro. But I have to say one thing, and that is that when I started working with Huawei, the phone manufacturer, they brought me to Shanghai. And when I pronounced the name of the company, I said, like you said, Huawei or something like that. They're like, it's called Huawei. So I just want to correct you.
Good. Thank you. I had no idea. When I saw that, I'm like, I really should have asked him in advance how to pronounce that thing.
By the way, putting aside the whole trade war between America and China, they were the number one phone manufacturer in the world. They passed Samsung, they passed Apple. So it's a remarkable company.
Really? Yeah. Wow. So I got to get to know them better. And actually, the last segment of your intro is where I would love to start, because I know you talk about your personal story. Obviously, that's what I think attracts so many people to you and to your message. And I'm just curious to know, I don't know what it's like for you, but for me, when I imagine, those conversations in kindergarten and first grade, what do you want to be when you grow up? And we say police officer, teacher, something like that. I doubt very few people, if any, especially when we were growing up, not sure your age, but I'm sure we're sort of in that same age bracket, we're saying tech vlogger and blogger and everything else you're doing today. So how did you get from wherever you were to where you are? Tell us the story behind it. And I would love to learn more about your journey.
Absolutely. So first of all, I'm 43, just turned 43 last weekend, actually.
Awesome.
Thank you, sir. So I'm from New York originally, moved to Israel when I was 15 in the middle of high school, which is not an ideal age to move from New York to Jerusalem. But that aside, I can tell you now, 28 years later, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. But anyway, I was a born geek, right? Today, everyone's a geek. Everyone loves to be a geek. Geek is cool. Back when I was a geek, I was just a geek. And I love tech. I always loved tech. I remember where I was standing, literally where I was standing when I turned on a computer for the first time. And it blew my mind. And I said to myself, I don't know how, I don't know where, I don't know when, but I got to work in this field. And then I moved to Israel. And as you may or may not know, Israel is a dominant player, and that's an understatement, in the tech sector across all verticals. And I started blogging. I was at my first job. I was like a technical writer. I was writing user guides that no one ever reads. And I was bored out of my mind. And so I started blogging. I didn't call it a blog because that wasn't a word back then. Speaking of what you want to be when you grow up, the things that I do today weren't in existence when I started. Right. So I started writing about tech just because I loved it. And pretty quickly, entrepreneurs started to reach out to me. They said, I read your article. I'd love to meet you. And from day one, I had massive imposter syndrome, because here I am, some random dude writing on a keyboard, and these amazing CEOs are asking to meet me. But I played along. So I met them and tried to help as best as I can with their pitch or with introductions or whatever it may be. And it ended up leading to a whole portfolio of companies that I work with on growth. So all things social media and content marketing, business development, fundraising, all this stuff. And that's kind of my first hat, let's say, startups. Second hat is the content. So I produce a ridiculous amount of content, written, audio, video, across all platforms. I write as a columnist for almost every leading tech publication: TechCrunch, The Next Web, Inc. Magazine, Fast Company, Entrepreneur Magazine, a whole bunch of others. And so that's kind of my second hat, the content. The third hat is that I work with multinationals. So I have an official formal relationship with Google and Oracle and Huawei and a couple others. And finally, I do a lot of public speaking. So yeah, that's pretty much what I do. I'm basically a kid in a candy store every day and meet the most amazing people. And I'll just keep playing along until everyone realizes that I'm full of crap.
I love it. And by the way, I think that, first of all, it's an honor to have you here with everything you have going on. But I want to drill down specifically, Hillel, on one thing you mentioned, because as a coach and as an organizational consultant, you talk about imposter syndrome. I heard a little bit, in a sense, of Gary Vee when you're talking about kind of putting a lot of content out there, getting recognized, not necessarily having that as your objective, but people sort of coming to it, liking what you're writing. And then you have this, moment where you're saying, am I really worthy of this? And you kind of said you're just going to push through it. Talk a little bit more, please, specifically about that, because imposter syndrome is a really big deal for a lot of folks. And I feel it too, right? Do I really have the goods? Do I really have the wherewithal to put myself out there as an expert, as a leader? How do you advise people, or just for yourself, to get through those moments when you have all that self-doubt?
Right. So I just heard a story a couple of weeks ago about a man who was standing at a party, and he was standing next to another individual. And the other individual said to him, look around us. There's all these important people here. What the heck am I doing here? And he said, I'm like, I don't understand why I was even invited to this party. And the guy looks at him and he says, you're Neil Armstrong. You're the first man to walk on the moon. He said, if Neil Armstrong has imposter syndrome, then I think all of us will have imposter syndrome. And so it's the truth. I mean, like I said, I love tech. I have a deep passion for technology, and I just followed that passion. I've never, built $1 billion company. I've never, I'm having a good time. And so the fact that I'm able to kind of support my family and build a business around my passion is just incredible. And the truth is, don't tell anyone, but even if I wasn't being paid for my work, I'd probably do it anyway. So
I love it. I've written about that idea. Where you kind of follow your passion, but you really have to have this deep connection to what you do. So Hillel, talk us through, technology changes so rapidly. I don't need to tell you this, but from when you got started to where we are today, for my listeners that we have different ages, of course, represented in the listenership, and Lead to Succeed Nation has had different experiences and whatnot. But I think all of us have to be reminded here every now and again of where we've gone to, because we take our current reality for granted.
Yeah, it reminds me of what I think is the funniest video on the internet. Louis C.K. has a video called "Everything's Amazing and Nobody's Happy," right? And he says, in my day, we had a rotary phone. Do you understand how primitive a rotary phone is? You're making sparks. And he goes, we used to hate people with zeros in their number because then you have to turn more.
Yes.
And he goes, today we have these cell phones and we're like, it won't. And he's like, it's going to space. Would you give it a second to come back from space? And he talks all about, the experience of flying, right? He goes, people come back from a flight and they're like, they talk about it like it's their worst nightmare. He goes, they made us sit there on the runway. He goes, oh, really? What happened next? Did you partake in the miracle of human flight? Like, we just don't appreciate what we have. And the truth is, technology is moving so fast. It's impossible to follow, literally. I often talk about drones just because it's a perfect example to illustrate how far we've come technologically. You're talking about a device that fits in the palm of your hand and can fly miles, record in 4K video with incredible stability and about 20 to 30 sensors around the drone. I'm talking like, this is it's sci-fi, and anybody could just go into a store and buy this thing, right? So that's just one example, but I think technology just moves so fast. Obviously we take our mobile phones for granted, but I think you and I probably both remember when everyone was saying, what do I need a phone for? I don't want to be accessible all the time. And even if I was convinced that I wanted a camera on a phone, what do I need that for? Just think, it was just yesterday, and the iPhone just came out yesterday. We were all using our Nokias and our Blackberries just yesterday. So, this world is just moving incredibly fast, and I'm having a fun time along for the ride.
Yeah, no, it really is moving fast. And it's so interesting because I run these mastermind groups and everybody writes, professional goals as well as personal goals. And I was looking at the goals from one of my groups. We just met last night, and more than one individual talked about how when he gets home, he's going to power off his phone. He's going to have an hour of no distraction, no disruption, spend time with family, whatever it is. And so, we do live in a very distracted world. And we do have to be able to obviously find the right balance. But you talked also about appreciation. And I'd like to get your take on how do we, in fact, become more appreciative? Because at the end of the day, we're having a conversation. You're obviously in technology, so you would think that this is going to be a, quote, geeky conversation about all the tech. And there's an element of that. There's no question. But we always have to remember, because this is a leadership podcast, because I'm always interested in the human side of things, we're people first, right? We're tech users second, but we're people first. So at the end of the day, Hillel, how do you sort of develop and foster your own form of appreciation? And how do you help set boundaries for people who are just have these unrealistic expectations? They want everything to just be so fast, so perfect, so everything, and kind of ground them in what really should be the proper framework?
Right. So it's a fantastic question. And the truth is, it's not always easy for me or most people, but I've started a daily custom recently, where I literally publish a gratitude list every single day. On all my platforms. Yeah, every single day on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, everywhere. And it just helps me get a little perspective, right? I mean, yes, we complain that, our cell phone isn't moving fast enough, but we opened our eyes this morning, right? We have a cell phone, we have internet. Like, do you understand? Speaking of Gary Vee, he always talks about like the chances of us being born, like the things that had to have happened for us to even be here, And it's true. By the way, I just want to give a shout out to Gary Vee, because many people think of him as this celebrity, but they don't know the human side of him. And many years ago, I had a summit in New York, and I asked him to come keynote. And he charges a handsome speaker's fee, but I told him it's early stage startups and we don't have that kind of budget. And he waived the fee and he came and he keynoted for free.
Wow!
So he's actually a big mensch, Gary. But yeah, I think it's all about perspective. I mean, I don't want to get too preachy on you here, but there's a prayer that us observant Jews say, that in the prayer there's 4 words. Well, I guess it's 6 words: in the sky above and the ground beneath. In Hebrew, it's bashamayim mimal v'al haaretz mitachat, where you say the sky above and the ground beneath. And so I once heard someone say something that I think is incredibly profound, and I literally think about it every single day. He said, "Why does it have to say the sky above? We know the sky's above. He could have just said the sky and on the ground. Why does it have to say the sky above and the ground beneath?" So he said, because things that are in the sky, important things, spirituality, relationships, things that are important, always look above and strive to be better. Things that are on the ground, health, wealth, not to say they're not important, but always look beneath. You stub your toe and it hurts, just thank God it's not cancer. It could always be worse. And that's just, for me, an amazing perspective on life, And so, yes, I'm not saying we don't have hardships. Trust me, I've had my fair share of hardships in my life. We all have. But first of all, just again, perspective, but also it's important to know, especially in today's day and age with this pandemic, that everyone's struggling. You're not alone. Everyone's struggling. There's no such thing as a person that struggles. There is no such thing. And when you have less money, you think if I had more money, I'd be happy. And then when you have a lot of money, you think if I had less money, everything would be simpler. Grass is always greener. And at the end of the day, if you're not going to stop, and as Ferris Bueller said, stop and look around, and whatever the quote is, just smell the flowers and look around. You're never going to do that. If you're waiting for something to happen, it's never going to come. Just stop, breathe, and appreciate what you have. Love it.
So I want to talk about one minor detail in the bigger picture. You talked about publishing on a daily basis, putting your gratitude out there. It's interesting. I did a poll recently on LinkedIn, and I asked folks, why is it that you don't post more? And some people just said they like to be private, and I totally get it. Not everybody wants to put themselves out there. I personally am introverted. I'm not necessarily energized, by putting myself out there. At the same time, I find that when I do publish, however publish is defined, whether it's on the internet or whether it's in a mastermind group, wherever I share this, there's that level of accountability. And for me as a coach, it's awareness and accountability. Without that accountability piece, we don't take action. So I'm curious to know what motivated you to put it out there publicly, and what do you find it does, both for yourself as well as for those that follow you?
Yeah. So, the truth is I started it during COVID because, again, I was struggling. We were all struggling. And so I said, I gotta take a step back and breathe and appreciate what I have. So I started doing it honestly to be kind of fully transparent. I did it for me. It was therapeutic. But I also love writing. And let's be honest, I also love the fact that I have a platform that I can inspire other people. And so
sure.
I kid you not, I'm going to say hundreds, probably more, but I'm going to say hundreds of messages from people saying they can't start their morning without reading my gratitude list, and that it gives them perspective, and it gives them. And so, that keeps me going. I get, the feedback today. I just came back from TikTok's offices, and I'm getting out of the elevator, and some guy walks over to me, goes, "I love your LinkedIn content," which, by the way, side note, I don't know what's going on with LinkedIn's algorithm, but my LinkedIn is just blowing up. People come over to me on the streets, not about Twitter, not about Facebook, not about LinkedIn. So something's going on over there, but I happen to love the platform. But when I get people like that, because you know how many people follow you, right? But you don't put a face to that number. right?
Yep.
You don't put a face. You don't. And so even if you know the person's name, it's not the same. When someone comes over you on the street and says, listen, your posts really inspire me.
Yep.
It just pushes you forward and incentivizes you to continue.
Which is why I think it's so great for people to get out more, because, like if you're, again, I mentioned introverted before, some people work from home or they're just kind of like insulated in what they do. Now that we have live events again, I think it's a huge piece for people just to make that connection, that personal touch. Hey, I see your stuff. I love what you're doing. This is my name. This is what I'm up to. What are you up to? And to really make those connections, because sometimes we kind of bury ourselves in our work and we just want to get things done. But at the end of the day, people are going to buy from people that they know, like, and trust. People are going to want to connect with people who have a message that resonates with them. And nobody's going to know about it if we keep it to ourselves. So I know even in my own family, there are those who look at me and they say, why are you posting all that stuff? And it's a little bit too, personal or whatever. And I try to walk the right balance there. But at the same time, I feel like if I don't present that authentic side of who I am, people will only see another coach with, more message about productivity and time management, which is great. But who is the person? Because ultimately it's the person, as John Maxwell talks about. First, you get behind the leader, then you get behind the message, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, 100%. I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, at the end of the day, for me, it's about owning the narrative, right? Because the more visibility you get on the internet, I don't know how to say this diplomatically, the more haters they're going to be. Right.
Sure.
So if you don't own your narrative, someone else will. And so it's important, I tell companies and entrepreneurs all the time, make sure you buy your own domain, your name.com, right? Because God forbid someone can go buy it and put who knows what on it and ruin your entire brand.
Right.
And so you have to own the narrative, right? Now, how much to share, how little to share, introvert, extrovert. By the way, I read a book recently that every business leader ever was an introvert. It's just fascinating.
It's a lot. Yeah. Many more than I would have thought. Absolutely.
Yeah. 100%. And so,
So
you
stay with that for a second, Hillel. Let's talk about owning your narrative a little bit. It wasn't one of the questions I planned to ask you, but because I thought you're really dealing more with the tech stuff, let's call it, which I want to come back to in a second. But ultimately, it is about putting yourself out in the market, what your services, what your products do, and who you are as a company. People want to know your why, right? They want to know your purpose of existence, your differentiators, all of that. So you must, it sounds like you do, advise people on the marketing, branding, elements of their businesses. What would you say are the key pieces companies, leaders need to be thinking about as it relates to their narrative, their story, and how people come to see them online and in person? Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, first of all, just to kind of sharpen and I guess crystallize what I do. So, yeah, I am a tech guy, but I work with tech companies on marketing. So it's that intersection between tech and marketing.
Perfect.
My blog, actually, techandmarketing.com. I bought that domain back in the day. Anyway, so yeah, I think that some of the things that I find entrepreneurs lack or are less strong at is the research element, right? Because, it's less exciting. Let's just be honest. It's less sexy. It's less fun. And so, a company that's going to, launch a product without doing any competitive analysis is just ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Like we already know that the numbers are, not working in your favor. If 95% of startups fail, if you're not going to do competitive analysis, the chances of you failing are probably 99%. So, that's right. So that's one aspect that I tell entrepreneurs first and foremost. Know your market. And when I say know your market, I don't mean, do research to convince yourself you're the only person doing what you're doing. No, build a landscape of 50 companies that are in your space. And in your space does not mean they're doing what you're doing. It means they're targeting the same audience as you. They have the same value proposition as you. It doesn't matter. Know your market like the back of your hand. That's first of all. Another thing that I find very, very important and something that I believe in strongly is consistency. Right? Because again, we have no, with this fast-paced world, we have no attention span. No one's going to sit around waiting. And if they come to your blog or your podcast or your vlog or whatever it is, and they consume great content, they're going to come back the next day. And if there's nothing there, you lost them. But if there's something there the next day and there's something there the next day, you got them. And so from a user experience perspective, consistency is important. But it's also important from Google's perspective. And I don't want to get too technical here, but Google wants you to produce as much good content as possible because when you produce a lot of content, people talk about you and people talk about you, they link to you. And that's how Google knows you exist in this world. So consistency is mega important.
Google, as well as I would imagine all social media outlets and platforms, right? They're looking for consistent content as well, which is great. So let's go back to what it is that you do all the time. And I'm just curious to know, as you not only you're looking in the weeds, so to speak, the trees, but you also try to see the forest, I'm sure, and see where the landscape is heading. So I'd love to get one crazy kind of like out of the box prediction from your side of things about the direction of tech and what we might see in the not too distant future?
Well, if we'd be having this conversation about 6 months ago, what I'm about to say would have been pretty outrageous, but a lot has happened in the last 6 months. So now it's a little less outrageous, but it's still a little futuristic and sci-fi to imagine. And that is that the way we interact with our computers, right? The fact that we're using a mouse in 2021 is it's laughable. It's ridiculous, right? That's just ridiculous. But then there's also the mobile phone. We talk about this mobile phone like it's a supercomputer in our pockets, and it's true, but it's also super primitive. If you think about it, you're walking on the streets with a slab of glass in your face. Like, there's got to be a better way. And so every single tech company without exception, Samsung, Facebook, Microsoft, Apple, they're all building glasses to enable us to interact with our devices without another device, rather, whether it's a hologram from our glasses, AR glasses, whatever it may be. And as you know, Mark Zuckerberg announced the metaverse a couple of weeks ago, which is basically an entire world. Instead of offline, it's virtual, but everything that we know from our world in a virtual environment. And so it's a little bit less far-fetched than it was about 6 months ago. But still, I think the way we're interacting with our devices is going to fundamentally change over the next 5 to 10 years.
Interesting. Okay, so let's go back to leadership, if I may, for a minute, because obviously you're talking to many, many successful tech companies. So what would you say are the qualities that rise to the top when you're meeting great people, great leaders? What would you say are the 2 to 3 qualities that you see time and again? That's question number one. And question number two, sort of a subset, is there anything specific within the tech industry from a leadership standpoint that you say, this is a quality that, you could kind of like look at and say, this person's going to succeed if they've got this. So I'm just sort of curious to know how it manifests specifically within the tech world.
So what's interesting is that if you speak to any top tier venture capitalist or anybody investing in technology who knows what they're doing, right? Sophisticated investors, they all say one thing. They all have one thing in common, and they all say we invest in people. Meaning, yes, of course, a product's important. Of course, a mission's important. But at the end of the day, it's people. At the end of the day, it's execution. And, you could look at any tech company to just prove that point. I mean, Apple wasn't first. Facebook wasn't first. Google wasn't first. They just out-executed everyone else, right? Before Facebook was MySpace. Before Apple was Nokia and BlackBerry. Before Google was, Alta Vista and Yahoo, right? They just out-executed everyone. So at the end of the day, it came down to the people. Just now I read a news piece that a pretty well-known, personality in Silicon Valley started a new, I don't even know what to call it, a new investment philosophy, let's call it. He invested $1.5 million, if I'm not mistaken, in a YouTube creator, so that in exchange, she gives him 30% of her returns over the next, or maybe 10% of her returns over the next 30 years. I don't remember the numbers exactly, but he's literally investing in a person, meaning she doesn't have a product. He's investing in the person. So that's something that I find, to be something in common with all the top tier investors in tech. They invest in people. As far as qualities that I see, the winners, there's a lot of them. First of all, humility. Like, I've over the years, I've had certain kind of characteristics or criterion that I was looking for when I would decide whether to work with someone. It was a good product, a person smarter than myself, and a good person. I've pretty much gotten rid of the first two. I could get behind most products. I could learn from anyone, but I need good people, right? And so humility, like, relax, okay? You're just an entrepreneur. That's first of all. I would say perseverance, because the entrepreneurial journey is, anyone who paints it as a hockey stick, because that's kind of like a cliche in the tech world, the hockey stick, it's not a hockey stick. Whoever tells you a startup's a hockey stick is just a liar. It's a roller coaster, right? And there is no entrepreneur on planet Earth that doesn't face struggles when building a company. It just doesn't exist. So perseverance, the ability to fail and get up again, that's incredibly important. And when I say humility also, by the way, it's important to mention, like, humility means that if you, for whatever reason, realize what you're doing is actually not a feasible business because you have too much competition or because whatever it may be, you have to have the humility to either pivot or start again, go back to the drawing board. So those are two things that are incredibly important. I think this is just my personal philosophy. I don't know that I've seen this anywhere else, but I fundamentally believe that to be successful in business in general, and most things in life, actually, you have to be a giver, right? You can't just take. And to be clear, business, and this is very relevant to your audience, because most people view business as a zero-sum game. If I'm giving you money, I'm losing money. I take money out of my pocket and give it to you. In reality, business is like a candle, right? You have fire, You don't lose anything when you give your fire to other people. And I want to tell you, I told that once to a big investor in a very, very large investment firm. And he said to me, you know what? That's spot on. But you know what else? If you don't give your fire to other people, you'll end up burning out yourself. And I love that because it's all about giving, right? And, again, it's not a zero-sum game. If I'm introducing a startup to an investor and then investor that then invests millions of dollars, the investor gains, the startup gains. And what did it cost me? An email? Why would I not do that? In fact, why would I take 5% of a company's pocket because I sent an email? I'm not judging anyone that makes money that way or finder's fees, whatever. It's not my model, but it actually, in my humble opinion, it's bad business. Like your relationship should not be monetized. If you're connecting two people, connect them. The money will come, I promise you. And that's not like if you build it, they will come cliche. It's true. If you help others win, you end up winning. Period. Full stop.
I love it. So I wish I could kind of end the segment right here because that was like just awesome. But I have one question within what you said and then one final question for the segment. You talked about the certain companies out executing others, and you said consistently in different areas. Is there anything in particular that you can say that the ones that won, how did they out execute? Was there anything particular, whether it was strategy? You talked about people earlier, obviously. What was it that allowed? Because I think everybody here would love to out execute their competition. They'd love to be the next great, whatever it is that they're trying to accomplish. Anything in particular you could talk to about that?
Yeah. So first of all, I'll just give a disclaimer, and I'm not saying it's all about execution. There's so many elements here. It's timing, there's luck, there's your network, there's a million things that contribute to the success of a company. But if you'd ask me what the most important element is, no question that it's execution. If I had to name a specific kind of component to that execution, I would say user first. Meaning, I'll just give a very obvious example. The olden days, before the iPhone, you had, let's say, the Nokia N95, which was, I remember when I bought it, it was like mind-blowing in terms of how advanced it was, but it was the worst user experience ever. The worst, right? What was iPhone's brilliance? It wasn't that it had better processing abilities or a better camera. The first iPhone was garbage, right? But what did it do? It simplified. And Da Vinci famously said, and Steve Jobs famously stole it from him, simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. It's not a problem to stuff in all the features into your app. The real wisdom is to simplify, right? And so, to me, that's what it's about. You look at Google. That's a perfect example. What is Google? It's a search. It's literally one little search bar. That's all it is, right? So that's what they did. They simplified the search process. And, so I think it really comes down to thinking of what the user needs, thinking about what the user wants, what will be the best experience for the user, not what will drive me the most money, not what will be able to stuff all the features in. What does the user want? The user wants simplicity. The user wants a product that will do what it needs him to do, not, 50 other things that they'll never do. They want it to do what it's supposed to do. And so good technology, and again, I think Steve Jobs famously said this also, good technology disappears. Meaning, again, before the iPhone, I had a keyboard on my BlackBerry. In reality, I'm typing on my phone maybe 20% of the time. Why is my keyboard there? I don't want it there. So come on the iPhone, they say, all right, let's get rid of the keyboard. When you're not typing, no more keyboard. Good technology is there when you need it, and it's gone when you don't. Simplicity. So that's, to me, I guess the most fundamental principle when it comes to execution is simplify as much as you possibly can.
Nice. Okay, so the last question for this segment, which I ask everyone, and the reason I ask it is because at the end of the day, a lot of the people, in fact, everybody that I get onto this podcast are super successful in what they do. And so oftentimes, whether it's the media or just our own perception of people, we think that people come successful as ready-made products. They kind of they have it, whatever the it factor might be. And as a result, I cannot learn from them. I cannot sort of follow their path. It's just not applicable to me. So Hillel, I want to know from you, what would you say was your biggest failure? Because we all have them. And so many people talk about how failure really is the spur, it's the motivation, it's the drive that takes us to that next level. What was your biggest failure and how did you overcome it?
Well, how do I choose one? There's so many.
You only get one.
Listen, I had 2 startups of my own, both failed. And why did they fail? They failed because the timing was wrong. That's what I said. There's a million elements, a million components to the success of the company. Both companies were products that now exist, but we were before them, but the market wasn't ready. So the first company I had was Slack before Slack, literally. And the second one was a podcasting app for my mobile phone, which is Clubhouse today. But we were just too early. And so both companies failed. We raised capital from Microsoft. Everything was going great, but we failed. I could say that the amount of lessons that I learned from that failure far, far exceeds the lessons I've learned from my successes. Far exceeds.
Okay. So let's transition now to the rapid fire. And the answers are short and sweet, even if you'd love to elaborate. First one is your favorite technological device or service that you can get for under $100.
My God, under $100. I don't even, wait, I have to answer. I don't even have anything like that.
We'll go to 160. I'm just kidding.
Under $100. My goodness. Can I pass? I literally.
I guess so. So take us to the next level.
Give me a second here. Hold on. I'm trying. There's got to be something that I own that's under $100. Looking around my tech closet here, all the things that I have here. Wow.
Hard to say that I stumped Hillel Fuld.
maybe a mini drone. I don't own a drone that's under $100. I think there's one that's $150, but
okay.
I mean, that's the best I could come up with.
Fair enough. Let's move on to the next one. What are you not very good at?
I'm not very good at delegating. I'm very, very bad at delegating. I need to, it's preventing me from scaling my business.
Got it.
Now, in my defense, it's a shot. I'm a fast shooter. I'm not allowed to elaborate. Sorry.
Okay. So we'll have to, I guess, continue this one offline. And the last one is a productivity tip that helps you to get more done.
Oh, this is a good one. If you're an iPhone user, there's a feature called text replacement in your settings that you can write 3 letters and it fills an entire paragraph. And on Android, it's called the personal dictionary. It literally saves you 4 hours a day. I'm not exaggerating.
Wow. Okay. So Hillel, look, you've given us so much. Before I ask you for your final life lesson, please let everybody know on Lead to Succeed Nation, where they can find you, learn from you, get your insights, your wisdom, all that good stuff.
Sure. So my website's hillelfuld.com, but I'm active on every single platform from Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, you name it. And I'm extremely responsive. That's basically because I'm obsessed with inbox zero. So anybody who messages me gets a response immediately and then I can get out of my inbox. So basically you contact me anywhere, literally. And if you want to actually have a conversation, just shoot me an email from the form on my website and I'll get back to you immediately.
Cool. Okay. So the last one, and this is the one that I always look forward to because it's an opportunity for my guests to share a life lesson that they have learned with my audience that gets them going, keeps them going, and would inspire all my listeners to take that next step.
Sure. I mean, we talked about perspective already, so I'm gonna leave that out. But we also talked about humility, so I'm gonna leave that out. A life lesson is learn from as many people as possible and establish and cultivate relationships as much as you possibly can. Even if you don't understand the immediate value in that relationship, I can tell you countless examples of people that asked me to meet and I was like, I don't know. And I met them and I was a little bit depressed that I wasted an hour and it ended up leading to incredible opportunities. There is just endless potential in meeting people and building relationships and learning from others. So and people ask me, what would I tell myself? If I was starting my career, I'd say build more relationships. So I would literally allocate X amount of hours a week or even a day to just meeting with no agenda, just to learn from people.
Awesome. And since I'm coming to Israel in a couple of weeks' time, we definitely have to meet up, hopefully, if we can fit it in. But either way, Hillel, it's been an absolute pleasure. I've been following you for a while. I'm so glad that we finally got a chance to talk and for you to share your wisdom on this podcast. And look, you should only have continued success. Keep killing it. Keep inspiring people. And thank you so much for being a guest on the podcast today.
Right back at you. You're a true professional and definitely looking forward to grabbing a steak here in Tel Aviv.
Oh, nice. Bye-bye now.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode and for investing in yourself so that you can lead to succeed. Before you go, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review the show. Your feedback gives the show more social proof and encourages more folks to listen.